Oil is beginning to simmer, and I wanted to introduce you to my teacher, since I've never made roux and she has. Folks, this is Amy Broussard of Broussard Homestead. She's going to let me know just how to cook like a Cajun. Okay, apparently the oil is beginning to bubble a little bit along the bottom, and I take it we're going to test it to see if it's ready.
We're going to test it out to see if it's ready.
Okay.
So you're going to take a small pinch of flour and just kind of drop it in.
And see how it bubbles
See how it
and
bubbles?
fries? That's also how you test it if you're going to fry like chicken or something.
Right.
You just put a little in there.
Now the trick is we're going to start turning this down.
By the way, folks, we're canning right next to this pan, so if you hear canning noises, it's because we are.
We're going to add 4 cups of white flour. Not all at one time. We're going to add it slowly. And we use a flat bottom wooden spoon.
Okay.
So I'm going to sprinkle this in there a little bit, and we're going to start stirring. A little bit at a time.
If you add too much, does it make lumps?
It can, but if that happens, then just use a whisk
Oh, okay.
to break it up.
And it's just flour. There's no salt, no
seasoning
nothing.
at all. The reason we don't season it is because a lot of times the seasoning will burn much faster than the flour.
Now, this is a long process, folks. You have to stir it once you get all the flour in for an hour, for several weeks.
45 minutes to sometimes long, an hour, sometimes even longer. It depends on your coloring, things like that. Notice I'm turning the temperature down as I go. I'm about down to medium heat now. You don't want it to bubble up over the edges of your pot. You want to make sure that you keep stirring it. You don't want it to sit in place because it'll burn. If it burns, one little speck burns, that's it. The whole thing is bitter.
It makes it bitter?
It makes it bitter. Yeah. And I am going to grab my whisk. You see, we're already changing colors.
It's also getting thick already.
Yep.
Does it change color more quickly if you put it all in there like that and let the heat go straight up to the dry? Or is it better to be sure it's all mixed in?
Yeah, you want it all mixed in because you don't want one spot darker than the other.
Oh, okay. And stirring it around won't cause that. It won't stop that from happening.
No.
Well, it gets almost like a paste, doesn't it?
It does. And you can go a little thicker or a little thinner. I prefer this recipe will fill a quart jar.
Okay.
So I prefer this thickness. This is what I've always been taught to do.
Okay, now tell me what you use this roux for.
Roux is used to make gravies, gumbos, étouffées, jambalaya, pretty much any Cajun dish you have.
And you can use it to make gravies. You just put some of it in the pan and add milk, or what?
No, you add water.
You add water.
You would put it into boiling water and stir it with a whisk until it dissolves.
Okay. And does that then thicken the gravy up at the same time?
Yep, it'll thicken it.
And when you're using it for that, you then put the amount in the pan you're going to use, and that's when you add your spices? Okay.
Yep. We don't add the spices because, like I said, a lot of times the peppers and things like that will burn rather quickly. And then it leaves you with that burnt, bitter taste.
Okay, folks, as Amy said, this is going to take 45 minutes up to maybe a little over an hour. And it'd be kind of boring to sit here and watch us just keep stirring. So I'm going to cut it off for now, and I'll bring it back when it's getting closer and you can see a dramatic change in the color. Okay, I brought you back again because our roux is starting to turn colors again. It's more the color we were talking about, the color of a piece of golden toast that you have for breakfast in the morning. And as you can see, the strings of color, the darker color, comes wherever she stirs it. So you spring up the color from the bottom of the pan, which is why you don't want to get those little black spots by leaving it too long in one place, because then not only are you bringing up black color, but you're also bringing up the scorched or burned roux, and that means you have to start from the beginning again.
Right.
This is a lot of work to start from the beginning over and over again. Also, Amy has said that if I don't have a pan, or you guys don't have a pan as big as this one, you can cut it in half and use 1 cup of oil and 2 cups of flour and use the same technique. Or if you want to do a bigger batch, you can double or triple what you're doing. It depends on how much time and how big a pan you have to stand there and stir. And you just keep going.
Remember, if you double or triple it, you're going to double or triple your time too.
Right.
Because it's going to take longer to darken all of the flour evenly.
Right. So that means if I cut it in half to use my pan, it may not take 45 minutes to an hour.
Right. It could take about 30 minutes.
Okay. Now you can see how much darker it's getting, and you can watch those strings of the darker color come up as she stirs. We did have to turn it down a little bit because it was starting to make clumps, and as you can see, it's doing a little bit of that again. So we'll probably end up turning it down again in a couple of minutes and making it cooler. I'll bring you back when we've got some more to tell you. Okay, so you heat it until it starts to smoke, and then you just
just turn it off and let it cool.
Do you wipe it down with the oil before you start heating it, or
no? As I'm heating it.
Okay. Okay. And then
you want to wipe off. You kind of fold your paper towel over a little bit and wipe out any excess oil because you don't want it thick.
Is that after it's heated or while it's heated?
While it's heated.
Okay. Here you are, folks, a little extra. We got cast iron care as part of the lesson today. And we're back again, and you can see how much darker it's gotten still.
Now we're at a caramel.
Now we're at a what?
It's almost caramel colored.
Right. Amy says that when this is ready, we were going to put it straight into our jars while it's hot. And one thing she cautioned is I need to have a metal funnel, because if I try and use my plastic canning funnel, they'll melt and become part of the roux and part of the jar. So we will remember to get a metal funnel to do this with.
And you always want to start with a warm jar.
Oh, that's right.
I'm going to use a quart jar. And so I've got in my oven right now, I have a quart jar. And I put it into the oven cold.
There it is. Okay.
And I'm slowly warming my oven to the lowest possible temperature that your oven will go. Mine goes to 170. You can go 200, 250. It won't hurt it.
Mine goes to 200. And I know because when I dehydrate, that's the lowest I can go, so I have to prop the door open so it doesn't get too hot.
Right. And that would be perfect. You just want to make sure the glass is hot because you're putting hot liquid into your jar. And if you put it into a cold jar, it's going to crack. Or it runs the possibility of cracking.
Or it shatters altogether.
Right.
If it's hot enough and the jar is cold enough, it will shatter.
And this is very hot, so you need to be very careful not to get this splashed onto your skin. It will continue to cook because it's an oil.
And then you will be boiling yourself.
Yeah, it can cause really bad burns. I know several people that have burned their hands
Badly.
pretty badly, yeah. And that's why when we're watching these bubbles, it's great. You always want it to bubble. It's simmering.
Which is cooking the flour in the oil.
Right. If your heat is too high, it will start to bubble like it's boiling. And it can actually splash up onto your skin.
And they will bubble and pop if it gets too high. The bubbles will pop like real loud. And if that happens, it's way too hot. You need to turn it
more than
way
likely you're going to burn yourself and then end up burning your roux.
Right. This is a much gentler bubble than a boil.
Oh yeah. It's starting to darken again.
And we're talking about the metal funnel. That is a metal canning funnel.
I ordered those off of Amazon.
Yeah, you can get them from Amazon. They fit right down in the neck of the jar, and you fill it from there. Let's go back and look how much darker it's gotten just in those few seconds.
Yeah, we're to another darkening stage. You can see the streaks coming through again. And the more you stir, the darker it's going to get.
But we don't want it to clump.
No, you don't want it to clump.
If it looks like it's going to start clumping, you turn the temperature down just a little.
Just a hair, yeah.
Because we need the heat to make it darker, but we don't need it to clump, because that will burn.
You can use another spoon or something. I would try to stick to a wooden spoon.
Not a metal.
Not a metal.
Okay. So a ladle probably would not work unless you had a wooden ladle.
Yeah, I've never seen a wooden ladle.
I have, but they're real hard to come by. Mostly, the one I saw was made by the woman who used it. So
well, there you go.
She did it herself because she wanted a wooden ladle.
Oh, that would be neat to have.
Yeah, I would think so too. Now, let me see that saucer again. And look at the difference in the color now, folks. As it's gotten cooler, it's even more
that's
close
about
to
where
the
we are.
colors. Okay, thank you.
That's about where we need to be, and we're at 48 minutes.
Yep.
Roughly about 45, 48 minutes. Something like that.
Okay, now do you have everything close to you that you need to pour it in?
Turn off my heat.
You want me to keep stirring while you get stuff together?
Yes, ma'am. I usually get Abby to fill in for that.
Right.
Watch yourself.
All right.
I'm going to take the jar out of the oven. And I set it on the stove out here. Will work. Do this. Can you scrape and film?
Yep.
Okay. You can stop stirring. Just don't flick it at me. Straight into the jar. Go slow, slow, slow. Slow.
Ouch, that's hot.
We're good. Okay. You can set that down here.
There we are. We put it down in there, and it filled up a quart jar. We now have a jar of roux.
Okay, same concept as when we're canning. You want to make sure and wipe the rim of the jar really well. And I'm using vinegar because vinegar has a degreaser in it. It acts as a degreaser. Be careful, the jar is really hot.
And one thing about this, folks, is you do not have to put it in a canner and water bath or pressure can it, because it is an oil base, so the air won't get to it. And go ahead. And it will make a suction and set it up as it cools.
Right.
So,
Now, as it cools, it's going to solidify on the bottom, and all of your oil is going to be at the top of your jar.
okay.
So when you use the roux, see if I can get this. Don't grab the skillet, dummy. Is it in there? Yeah. Okay.
I'm following you.
All of this is going to solidify, and you're going to have oil on the top of the jar. When you use the jar, when you unseal it to use it, you're going to pour the oil off into a small glass container or something like that.
Okay.
Use whatever roux that you need and replace the oil on top.
Okay.
The oil acts as a seal to keep bacteria and stuff from growing on top of the roux.
Makes sense.
So you're going to notice about a ½ inch worth of oil on the top of the jar. That's normal. That's what it's supposed to look like. And it won't take long. That jar is going to seal on its own. And then as soon as it's cooled down, I usually leave it overnight, just like regular canning jars. I set it off to the side on a towel. And it's good to put in the pantry
Excellent.
tomorrow.